They say every woman dreams of her wedding day. The soft rustle of silk, the golden light spilling through the chapel windows, the trembling joy of knowing she's chosen love. But as I stand beneath the heavy archway of St. Lucia's Cathedral, wrapped in ivory lace that feels more like a shroud than a gown, I can only think that this must be what it feels like to walk willingly into your own execution. My hands are trembling beneath the veil, pale against the bouquet of white roses that smell too pure, too innocent for what's happening here. Every detail is exquisite. The chandeliers dripping with crystal, the polished marble aisle that reflects my every hesitant step, the air so thick with expensive perfume and candle wax that I can almost taste the wealth suffocating me. Yet beneath all that luxury is a silence, a heavy, predatory stillness, as if the walls themselves know that this is not a celebration, but a transaction. And then there's him. Damien Moretti stands at the altar, tall and unmovable, dressed in black tailored perfection, his presence so commanding that even the shadows seem to bend toward him. The moment my eyes meet his, the air leaves my lungs. He looks older, harder, crueler, a man carved from secrets and sin. But even with the years between us, I'd know that face anywhere. The smirk that once haunted my teenage nightmares, the ice-blue eyes that used to look down on me from the hallway lockers, the cruel curve of lips that used to whisper my name like a weapon. My high school bully, my tormentor, the boy who once laughed as I cried, now my husband. It's almost laughable, the way fate twists itself into knots just to remind you that you never really escaped. The priest's voice echoes somewhere far away, reciting vows I can barely hear, his words dissolving into a blur as my heartbeat drowns them out. I should be focusing on something. The words, the ceremony, the image of my parents sitting in the front pew pretending not to tremble. But all I can do is stare at Damien's hands. Large, strong, veined, the same hands that once shoved my books off the table in high school, now wearing a wedding band that glints like a promise I never made. He watches me with a calm that's terrifying, the kind of calm that hides 1,000 storms underneath. His mouth tilts into a faint smile, not warmth, not kindness, but possession. And for a moment, the years between then and now collapse. I'm 16 again, cornered by lockers, hearing his voice drawl, "Careful, Rossi, you look like you might cry." And I remember exactly what it felt like to hate him. But hate is a strange thing. It burns too long, and in its ashes something else always grows. Something quieter, darker, harder to kill. I think he knows that. When the priest asks me if I take this man, I hesitate. I can feel Damien's gaze sharpen like the edge of a blade. Somewhere in the back of the church, someone clears their throat. A subtle warning. My mother's eyes plead from behind her veil. "Do it, Elena, please." And I understand that my answer isn't really mine at all. "I do," I whisper, my voice trembling, barely audible, but Damien hears it. Of course he does. He always hears me, always notices, always knows. His lips curl in victory as he slides the ring onto my finger. Heavy, cold, expensive. And when his hand closes around mine, the world narrows to that single, suffocating touch. The kiss comes next, and it's not gentle, not soft, not what a kiss between husband and wife should be. It's a warning disguised as affection. His mouth firm, claiming, almost cruel, as if he's reminding me that my freedom ends where his skin begins. The crowd erupts in polite applause, but it sounds distant, hollow like echoes in a tomb. When he pulls back, he leans close enough that his breath ghosts against my cheek, his voice low enough that only I can hear it. "You were always meant to be mine, Elena," he says. "You just didn't know it yet." I want to scream. I want to run. I want to tell him that he's insane, that he's cruel, that I'd rather die than belong to him. But the truth is, I can't move. My legs are heavy, my throat dry, and all I can do is stare at him and wonder what kind of sick game this really is. Because Damien Moretti doesn't marry for love. Men like him marry for power, for leverage, for control. And yet, why me? As we walk down the aisle together, his hand resting lightly but firmly at the small of my back, I catch a glimpse of the guests. Powerful men in tailored suits, women with diamond smiles that don't reach their eyes. My father nods stiffly as we pass, his expression a careful mask, but there's guilt there too. I can feel it like a pulse in the room. When we step outside, the sunlight feels blinding. Cameras flash, people cheer, but it all feels wrong, like a movie I've been forced to star in. Damien raises my hand to his lips for the photographers, his touch deceptively tender, and I realize something horrifying. He's enjoying this, every second of it. The show, the control, the fact that the girl who once flinched at his every word now wears his name. At the reception, the champagne flows and laughter fills the air. But beneath it all, there's tension. The kind that buzzes like electricity under the skin. Every time I look at him, he's already looking at me, his eyes softening when no one else is watching. And that, more than anything, terrifies me. Because I know cruelty. I know hatred. I can survive those. But this strange, unreadable tenderness from the man who ruined my life, feels like a trap I don't know how to escape. Later, when the music fades and the guests begin to leave, he takes my hand and leads me toward the waiting car. His grip is gentle, but his silence is heavy. The drive to his mansion is long and winding, the city lights fading into the black velvet of the countryside, and I stare out the window, wondering what kind of life awaits me there. When we finally arrive, I see it. A sprawling estate shrouded in mist, tall iron gates that open without a sound, guards stationed like statues. It's beautiful in the way danger always is. Breathtaking, but deadly if you get too close. He helps me out of the car, his hand lingering at my waist, his voice low and smooth. "Welcome home, Mrs. Moretti." Something inside me twists. Home. As if this place, this prison of marble and gold, could ever be home. I glance up at him, trying to find some trace of the boy I once knew, the boy who mocked my thrift store dresses and scribbled cruel notes in my locker. But all I see is a man who's learned to weaponize his charm. As he leads me through the grand doors, my heels echoing against the polished floor, I can't shake the feeling that I've walked straight into a beautiful, gilded cage. And the worst part? I don't know if he locked me inside to punish me, or to keep me. The sound of the mansion's heavy doors closing behind me echoes like the final click of a lock, and for a long moment I simply stand there, frozen in the vast foyer, surrounded by opulence so staggering it almost feels cruel. The chandeliers shimmer like frozen stars, their light cascading down onto floors so polished they reflect my reflection. Pale, trembling, lost. A bride who looks less like a wife and more like a ghost caught between two worlds. The one she was stolen from, and the one she'll never escape. Damien's footsteps are slow and deliberate behind me. The rhythm of a predator who knows his prey has nowhere left to run. "You should eat something," he says quietly, his tone too casual for the weight pressing against my chest. "You've been standing since morning." I turn to look at him, his face half in shadow, half in light, and it hits me again. How strange it feels to see the boy who once shoved my lunch tray to the floor, now wearing an expression that borders on concern, though I know better than to mistake it for kindness. "I'm not hungry," I manage to whisper, and even as I say it, I realize I'm lying. Not just about food, but about everything, because I'm starving for answers, for clarity, for any thread of sense that can explain how my life has collapsed into this surreal, glittering nightmare. He studies me for a moment, then gestures toward the grand staircase. "Come," he says simply, and I follow. Because what else can I do? The echo of our footsteps seems to stretch on forever, until we reach a corridor lined with portraits. All men with sharp eyes and cruel mouths, each one bearing the same unshakable aura of power that clings to him. He leads me into a study, vast, dark, elegant, smelling faintly of leather and whiskey, and gestures toward the chair across from his desk. Sit. I hesitate, but his gaze leaves no room for defiance. The leather creaks beneath me as I lower myself into the chair, my pulse thundering in my ears. Damien moves with that same quiet confidence I remember from high school, that lazy, dangerous grace that made everyone else shrink back, even the teachers. Except now there's something colder in him, something honed by years of command. He sits down across from me and slides a black folder across the desk, the thick paper inside whispering like a secret. "You should know what you've signed up for," he says, his voice calm, almost gentle, though the edge beneath it is unmistakable. I look at him, then down at the folder. My hands hesitate, fingers trembling as I open it. And there it is. A contract. Legal, binding, clauses that speak of alliance, inheritance, property, and something much darker written between the lines. "This marriage," he continues, leaning back in his chair, eyes locked on me, "is not about love. You already knew that, didn't you?" I nod, though my throat feels too tight to speak. "It's about blood," he says, his tone softening in a way that makes it more terrifying. "Your father owes mine. Debts, favors, promises that were never kept. And now," he spreads his hands, smiling faintly, "here we are. Payment, in the most poetic form." I stare at him, stunned, as the words sink in, thick and suffocating. "You married me to settle a debt?" His eyes narrow slightly, and he leans forward, elbows on the desk. "No," he says quietly. "I married you because your father begged me to spare him." The world seems to tilt for a moment, my pulse thundering so hard I can barely breathe. "You're lying," I whisper, but I already know he isn't. He shakes his head slowly, almost pitying me. "He came to me himself, Elena. On his knees. Said he couldn't lose his family. Said you were innocent. Said I'd remember you." I blink rapidly, my mind spinning, trying to reconcile this new truth with the fragments of the man who raised me. Proud, cold, unyielding. Now groveling before the monster who once made my life a living hell. "Why me?" I ask finally, my voice cracking. "You could have forced anyone. Why me?" Something flickers in his expression then, a shadow of something raw, buried deep beneath the arrogance. "Because you were always supposed to be mine," he says simply, as if it's the most natural thing in the world. I want to laugh, to scream, to tell him he's insane, but all I can do is stare at him in disbelief. "You hated me," I say, the words trembling out of me like a confession. "You made my life miserable." He exhales slowly, a bitter half-smile twisting his lips. "I was 17, angry, stupid. You were too bright, too clean, and I didn't know how to touch something beautiful without destroying it." The silence that follows is unbearable. His eyes hold mine, unflinching, and for the first time I see it. Regret. Not enough to soften him, but enough to confuse me. He rises then, circling the desk slowly, each step measured until he's standing beside me. I can feel the warmth of his body before he even reaches out. His hand touches my chin, gently forcing me to look up at him. And the contact sends a shock through me that I hate myself for feeling. "Whatever you remember about me," he says quietly, his voice low and dark, "forget it. That boy is dead. What stands before you now is a man who gets what he wants." "And what do you want?" I whisper, unable to stop myself. His gaze burns into me, the faintest ghost of a smile playing at his lips. "You." The word is simple, but it lands like a verdict, sealing my fate all over again. He releases me then, his hand falling away, and I feel cold without it, disgusted with myself for even noticing. "You'll have your own room," he says after a moment, his tone businesslike again. "You'll attend dinners, smile when you're expected to, play the part, do that, and I'll make sure your family remains untouched. And if I don't?" His smile fades. "Then I remind you why people fear the Moretti name." He turns away, walking toward the window, his silhouette dark against the fading light. For a moment, he's quiet, and I think that might be the end of it. The conversation, the illusion of choice. But then he speaks again, his voice softer now, more dangerous. "There's something you should understand, Elena," he says. "Your father didn't just owe me money, he owed me blood, and I always collect my debts." The room feels colder suddenly, though the fireplace burns bright. I realize then that this isn't a marriage, it's a binding, chains disguised as vows. I rise slowly, every nerve in my body screaming for escape. But before I can take a step, his voice stops me. "Tomorrow," he says, not turning around, "I'll show you the part of this house that's yours. You'll want to see it before you decide to run." The way he says it sends a chill down my spine, because it sounds less like a warning and more like a promise. And as I walk toward the door, my pulse hammering, I catch a glimpse of my reflection in the glass. Pale, haunted, fragile, and realize that whatever he's about to show me tomorrow might change everything I thought I knew about this man, and about what he truly wants from me. I barely sleep that night, though the bed is large enough to swallow me whole, the sheets softer than anything I've ever felt. And yet, for all the luxury, I feel like I'm lying on cold stone, my body rigid, my mind restless, my thoughts trapped in 1,000 spirals that keep circling back to one unbearable truth. I am his wife now, and no amount of wishing or screaming into my pillow will ever undo that. The silence in this mansion is suffocating. A kind of silence that listens, that waits, that breathes with you. And sometimes I think I can hear it whispering, in the dark, reminding me that nothing here happens without Damien's permission. When morning finally comes, it slips through the heavy curtains like a reluctant guest, casting pale streaks of gold across the marble floor, and I realize with a kind of detached horror that it's beautiful here. The kind of beauty that feels dangerous because it makes you forget how easily it can kill you. There's a knock on the door, soft but insistent, and before I can answer, a woman in her 40s enters, dressed neatly in black, her expression calm but wary, as if she's long accustomed to walking through the tension that clings to this place like smoke. "Good morning, Mrs. Moretti," she says, her voice careful, polite, practiced. "Mr. Moretti asked me to bring you breakfast and show you around once you're ready." The title, Mrs. Moretti, lands like a stone in my chest, and though I want to correct her, to tell her that name feels like a collar tightening around my throat, I only nod, because resistance feels useless when the whole world has already decided who I am supposed to be. An hour later, after forcing down a few bites of food that taste like ash in my mouth, I find myself walking through the corridors of the mansion. The woman, her name is Lucia, leading me past gilded halls and glass cases full of antiques that probably cost more than my childhood home. Every inch of this place gleams with power and taste, but beneath it, I can sense something else, something restless, like the heartbeat of a predator just beneath the surface. When we reach the West Wing, Lucia hesitates for a fraction of a second before speaking. "This part of the house," she says softly, "is private. Mr. Moretti doesn't usually allow anyone here." "Then why am I here?" I ask, and though I try to sound casual, my voice wavers, because deep down I already know the answer. "Because he said you should see it," she replies, and that's all she says before leading me to a tall wooden door at the end of the hall. The moment she opens it, a rush of cold air greets me, carrying with it the faint scent of dust, leather, and something sharper. Maybe old memories. The room is dimly lit, but as my eyes adjust, I feel my stomach drop. The walls are covered in photographs, hundreds of them, maybe more. And every single one is of me. Me at 17, sitting in the school courtyard reading. Me walking down the hallway clutching my books. Me at prom, standing awkwardly near the punch bowl. Me laughing with friends, unaware of the camera. Me crying in the locker room after he humiliated me in front of everyone. They're everywhere. Some printed, some framed, some yellowed with age, pinned meticulously like a collector's exhibit. I stumble forward, my breath catching in my throat, my hand trembling as I reach out to touch one of them. It's me on graduation day. I never even saw him there. My voice is barely a whisper. "What is this?" From behind me, his voice comes, deep, smooth, unnervingly calm. "A reminder," he says. And I turn, startled, to find him standing in the doorway, his posture relaxed, but his eyes locked on me with that same unreadable intensity that makes it impossible to breathe normally when he's near. "A reminder of what?" I demand, though my voice cracks halfway through. He steps closer, slow and deliberate, each footstep echoing against the hardwood floor like a countdown. "Of what I destroyed," he says simply. "Of what I couldn't have back then, no matter how much I wanted it." I stare at him, disbelief mixing with fear, and something else I can't name. "You wanted me? You bullied me, Damien. You made my life hell." "I know." His voice is low, full of something that sounds almost like shame, but it's fleeting, quickly buried beneath the weight of his composure. "I was angry. I didn't know how to handle it. You were light. And I was—" He pauses, looking away for a moment, darkness pretending to be human. "I wanted to hate you because loving you felt impossible." I shake my head, stepping back until my shoulders hit the wall, the photos pressing cold against my skin. "You're sick," I whisper, but it comes out more like a plea than an accusation. "Maybe," he murmurs, taking another step closer until he's standing right in front of me, his shadow swallowing mine. "But I've never lied about who I am. Not to you." His hand rises, slow and deliberate, brushing a strand of hair from my face, his fingers grazing my cheek just enough to make my breath hitch. "You think this is a cage?" he says, his voice softer now, almost tender. "But it's not, Elena. It's protection. You have no idea what kind of enemies your father's debt brought to your doorstep. Marrying me wasn't your punishment. It was your salvation." The words hit me like a wave I can't outrun. And for a moment, I don't know if I'm angrier at him for saying it, or at myself for wanting to believe him. "Protection?" I repeat bitterly. "You call this protection? You kidnapped me into your world, forced me into a marriage I didn't want, surrounded me with armed guards, and you think that's saving me?" He smiles faintly, but there's no humor in it. "You still don't understand. If I hadn't married you, Elena, someone else would have. Someone who wouldn't care if you lived through the week. I didn't take your freedom. I traded it for your life." The room feels suddenly smaller, the air thicker, the walls closing in with every word he speaks. I can't tell if he's manipulating me or confessing, if his obsession is love twisted into something monstrous, or just madness wearing the mask of devotion. He turns away then, walking toward one of the photographs, his fingers brushing lightly against it. A picture of me smiling, sunlight catching in my hair. "You used to look at the world like it, couldn't touch you," he says softly. "I envied that. I wanted to break it just to see what it would take to make you look at me instead." There's a silence after that, heavy and unbearable, and all I can hear is the pounding of my own heartbeat, loud and frantic. "Why are you showing me this?" I ask finally. He looks at me over his shoulder, and in his eyes I see something that chills me more than anger ever could. Vulnerability. "Because I want you to understand," he says, that you're the only thing in this house that's real. And then he walks out, leaving me standing there surrounded by 1,000 versions of myself, each one a ghost trapped in his memory. And for the first time, I realize the truth. The cage isn't made of walls or locked doors, it's made of him, of the way his gaze traps me, the way his words wrap around my mind until I can't tell where my hatred ends and something darker begins. When I finally find the strength to leave the room, my pulse still racing, I know one thing for certain. I can't stay here, not like this, not when every inch of this mansion hums with his obsession. But as I step into the hallway, I hear a door slam somewhere below, followed by the unmistakable sound of raised voices. Sharp, male, urgent. And then I hear his name. Damien. And mine. Whatever he's been protecting me from. It's already here. The sound of shouting drifts up through the marble hallways like thunder rolling in from a distance, muffled by thick walls but sharp enough to make my pulse race. And for a few heartbeats I simply stand there frozen, every instinct screaming that I shouldn't move, that whatever's happening downstairs doesn't belong to me. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, and fear has a strange way of making you bold when you should be quiet. I move carefully, my bare feet silent against the cold stone, following the voices until they grow clearer. Rough, male, urgent. And one of them, unmistakably, belongs to Damien. I stop at the top of the staircase, hidden in the shadows, watching the scene below unfold like something out of a crime film that no one should ever see in real life. Damien stands near the grand piano, his shirt sleeves rolled up, his expression carved in fury and control, while two of his men, broad, armed, loyal, hold another man by the collar, blood already staining the edge of his mouth. "You lied to me," Damien says, his tone quiet, almost conversational, and that somehow is far more terrifying than if he'd been shouting. "You took my money, my trust, and you thought I wouldn't notice?" The man sputters something I can't hear. A plea, maybe. But Damien's gaze doesn't waver. He steps forward, slow, precise, and when he reaches him, he simply tilts his head slightly before saying something that chills me to the bone. "You should have known better than to steal from me when she's in this house." And just like that, I realize he's talking about me. The man starts to protest again, but Damien raises a hand, and the room falls silent. The kind of silence that hums with danger. Then, in one swift, fluid motion, Damien grabs the man by the throat and drives him back against the wall, the sound echoing like a gunshot through the room. "This family," he says, low and steady, "doesn't make mistakes around my wife." My wife. The words hit me with strange force, not warmth, not comfort, but something heavier, stranger, as if he's wrapping me in a shield I never asked for. The man chokes out a garbled apology, and Damien releases him abruptly, turning to his men. "Take him to the warehouse," he orders coldly. "I'll decide later what to do with him." They drag the man away, and Damien stands there for a long moment, staring at nothing. His jaw tight, his breathing controlled, the rage still simmering beneath his calm exterior. I should turn back, retreat to the safety of my room, pretend I never saw any of it. But something about the way he exhales, the faint tremor in his hand before he shoves it into his pocket, makes me stay. And then he speaks without turning around. "You shouldn't be watching this, Elena." The way he says my name, low, resigned, as if he expected me to be there all along, sends a chill up my spine. I step forward slowly, gripping the banister as if it's the only thing keeping me steady. "You said this marriage was about protection," I whisper, my voice barely carrying through the vastness of the hall. "But I don't feel protected, Damien. I feel imprisoned." He turns to look at me then, and the expression on his face is not anger but something heavier, more human. "It's the same thing sometimes," he says softly. "No," I say, shaking my head, moving down a few steps. It's not. Protection is something you give. A cage is something you build. And you've built an empire out of both. He watches me quietly, and for a moment, I think he might walk away. But instead, he runs a hand through his hair and gestures for me to follow. You want the truth? He asks. Fine, come with me. I follow him through a narrow corridor I hadn't noticed before. The air colder here. The walls lined with old photographs and faded documents that whisper of history and bloodlines I don't understand. We reach a small room tucked behind a thick steel door, and when he unlocks it, I'm met not with opulence but with dust. The faint smell of mildew, and boxes stacked high, each labeled with neat handwriting. Ledgers, letters, police reports. This, he says quietly, is what made me. He pulls out a worn envelope, yellowed with age, and hands it to me. Inside are photographs. A boy, maybe 12 or 13, his eyes bruised, his lips split, standing next to a man with a cruel smile and a hand gripping his shoulder too tightly. My father, Damien says simply, watching my reaction. He ran this empire before me. Every bruise I got was a lesson, every scar a reminder. He believed love was weakness. He taught me that mercy gets you killed. I stare at the photographs, my throat tightening. And your mother? I ask softly. He hesitates. She tried to leave once, he says, his voice flat, detached, as if reciting a story he's told himself too many times. He found her halfway to the airport. The next day I learned what it means to lose everything. I swallow hard, unsure whether the ache in my chest is for him or for the boy he used to be. So you became him, I whisper. His eyes flick to mine, sharp but not angry. No, he says quietly. I became what I needed to be to survive him. The room feels smaller with every word. The air thickens with ghosts I can't see, and for a long moment neither of us speaks. Finally, I break the silence, my voice trembling. Is that why you hurt me in school? Because you couldn't hurt him? He exhales, looking down, his hand tightening into a fist. You were light, he says after a long pause, and I was drowning. I wanted to ruin you because I didn't know how to want you any other way. I close my eyes, his words pressing against my chest like a bruise that will never fade. There's nothing to say that can make any of this right. But some part of me, against all reason, understands the twisted logic of pain. How sometimes it's easier to break something beautiful than admit you need it. When I open my eyes, he's closer, standing just a breath away, his voice lower now, rougher. I don't expect forgiveness, he says, but I need you to know that everything I do now, the cage, the guards, the control, it's because there are men out there who would tear you apart just to hurt me. I can't let that happen. I want to tell him I don't believe him, that he's justifying his obsession. But the sincerity in his tone shakes me. There's a strange, terrible truth to it. He's not just a monster. He's a product of one. Still, I meet his gaze, refusing to look away. And what if the thing I need protecting from is you? For the first time, he flinches. Just slightly, but enough that I see it. He doesn't answer. Instead, he steps back, his expression shuttered once more, his control snapping back into place like armor. Dinner will be ready in an hour, he says finally. Lucia will find you. He turns to leave, but as he reaches the door, I hear him whisper, so quietly it might have been meant for himself. I never wanted to become him. And then he's gone. I stand there in the dim light, the photograph still in my hand, my mind spinning with the weight of everything I've just learned. For the first time, I see the cracks in Damien's control, the human underneath the beast. But I also know that knowing his pain doesn't make me safe from it. When I return to my room, The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold, and as I look out through the window bars disguised as ornate ironwork, I realize the most terrifying truth of all. Maybe the monster I should fear isn't just the one who made him, but the one who loves me now in all the wrong ways. And deep down, I can't tell if I want to escape him, or if a part of me already knows I never will. The night feels different after everything I learned. Heavier somehow, as if the walls themselves have absorbed the weight of Damien's past, carrying the echoes of all the things he never said aloud. And though I tell myself I shouldn't care, that his pain doesn't justify the way he's trapped me here, there's something inside me that won't stop replaying his voice, that quiet confession. I never wanted to become him, looping endlessly in my mind until it starts to sound less like an excuse and more like a wound that never healed. The mansion is silent except for the faint hum of the wind outside, the distant shuffle of guards, and my own heartbeat, too loud in my chest, too fast, too aware. I sit by the window, watching the courtyard below, where the lights cast long, distorted shadows over the cobblestones. And I wonder if this is what it means to live in a gilded cage, to be surrounded by beauty so exquisite it numbs you, while the invisible bars press closer every time you breathe. Somewhere beyond those walls lies freedom, chaotic, uncertain, real. But every time I imagine running, I remember the way Damien looked at me when he spoke about protection, about enemies, about debts paid in blood. And I realize that fear has a way of convincing you that captivity is safety. I don't know how long I sit there before I hear it, the sound that doesn't belong. A crack in the night. A sharp, sudden pop, muffled but unmistakable, followed by the rush of feet below, the shouted commands, the low, distant thunder of engines. Gunfire. My body reacts before my mind can catch up, every muscle going rigid, my breath caught halfway in my throat. I step back from the window just as a figure bursts through the doorway. One of the guards, face pale, eyes wide. "Mrs. Moretti," he says, voice low but urgent. "You need to stay in here, do you understand? Don't open the door for anyone but the boss." I nod, though my heart is pounding so hard I can barely hear him, and before I can ask what's happening, he's gone. His footsteps fading down the corridor as the distant chaos grows louder. I can hear shouting now. Damien's voice among them, commanding, fierce, the sound of a man who's been fighting all his life and doesn't know how to stop. The next few moments are a blur of panic and silence and the suffocating rhythm of my own pulse, until there's another sound. Closer this time, sharper. A shattering window somewhere down the hall, and instinct takes over. I reach for the nearest thing I can use as a weapon, a silver letter opener from the desk, ridiculous and useless but heavy in my hand, and I move toward the door just as it bursts open. "Damien?" I whisper, but it isn't him. The man who steps inside isn't one of ours. His clothes are dark, his face hidden beneath a mask, a gun glinting in his hand, and for a heartbeat we just stare at each other, predator and prey, before he raises the weapon, and I do the only thing I can think of. I throw the letter opener. It misses him by a mile, clattering uselessly against the floor, but it's enough of a distraction that I bolt for the adjoining hallway, barefoot, heart hammering, lungs burning. I hear his footsteps behind me, fast, relentless, the echo of his boots chasing me through the darkness as I twist through unfamiliar corridors that all look the same. Marble, paintings, doors that lead nowhere. Until I trip, my hand catching the edge of a table, pain shooting through my wrist. I turn, ready to face him, but before I can scream, before he can reach me, there's another sound, a single, deafening shot. And the man collapses mid-step, falling hard, his weapon clattering away. For a moment, the world stops. And then I see him, Damien, standing at the end of the hall, gun still raised, chest heaving, eyes wild, the sleeve of his shirt stained red where a bullet has grazed him. He crosses the distance between us in seconds, grabbing my arm, pulling me to him so tightly that I can barely breathe. "Are you hurt?" he demands, his voice rough, almost shaking. I shake my head, the adrenaline crashing over me in waves. "You're bleeding," I whisper, reaching for his arm, but he grabs my hand instead, pressing it against his chest as if to steady me, not himself. "It's nothing," he mutters, though the blood says otherwise. "You shouldn't have left your room." "There was a man—" "I know," he says, his tone sharp, commanding again. "He won't be a problem." He turns, pulling me with him, leading me down a back stairwell toward the lower levels, where the air smells of concrete and oil. The deeper we go, the louder the sounds of gunfire become. Short bursts, then silence, then the low murmur of men coordinating through radios. It feels like stepping into another world, one built entirely on danger and control. When we reach the reinforced door that leads to the underground garage, Damien stops, pressing a code into the keypad with one hand while keeping his gun in the other. "Stay behind me," he says, not looking back. "No matter what happens, you don't move until I say." I nod again. Though fear has made me numb, my thoughts scattered. The door opens and chaos spills in. Men shouting orders, cars revving, the metallic tang of gunpowder thick in the air. Damien moves like a storm, issuing commands with quiet authority, every motion precise, every decision instinctive. For a moment, I catch glimpses of the man beneath the mask. Not the cruel, mocking boy from my memories, but the leader who built his empire from blood and willpower, the protector who throws himself into danger without hesitation. And then I see it happen. The flash of movement to his left. The glint of a gun barrel raised behind a car. "Damien!" I scream before I can stop myself. He turns just in time, the bullet grazing his shoulder instead of his chest. And in the same breath he fires back, his shot finding its mark. The attacker falls and Damien stumbles, one hand clutching the wound, his face pale. I'm at his side before anyone else can reach him, my hands pressed against the bleeding wound, my breath shallow. "You need a doctor," I say, but he only shakes his head, wincing. "Not yet," he mutters, his voice low but steady. "Not until I know you're safe." His words cut through me like glass, not because of what they mean, but because of how they sound. Not as an order, not as a claim, but as something dangerously close to care. The fight fades gradually, the noise giving way to silence, the air still charged but calmer. One of his men approaches, speaking quickly in Italian, and Damien nods, giving a brief order I can't catch. Then he looks at me, really looks at me, his expression unreadable. "You see now," he says quietly. "This world doesn't forgive weakness." I don't answer because I can't. My hands are still shaking, his blood warm against my skin, and something inside me, something I can't name, cracks open just a little. When the immediate chaos settles, he lets the others handle the cleanup, leading me back upstairs, his steps slower now, his breath heavier. By the time we reach the upper hall, the adrenaline has faded, leaving only exhaustion and the faint tremor in his hands. I help him sit, grabbing a towel from the nearest table, pressing it against his wound. He looks at me then, eyes softer than I've ever seen them. "You should hate me," he murmurs. "I do," I whisper, though my voice betrays me, trembling, unsure. His lips twitch into a half smile that doesn't reach his eyes. "Then why are you shaking?" I don't answer, because the truth is too dangerous to speak, that I'm not sure anymore if I'm trembling from fear of him, or for him. He reaches up, fingers brushing my jaw, the gesture slow, almost reverent, and for the first time I see the man he might have been if the world hadn't turned him into something darker. And that's when I realize the most terrifying part of all, beneath all the blood and cruelty, I'm beginning to care. And caring for a man like Damien Moretti can only end one way: in ruin. The days that follow the ambush bleed together like spilled ink, each one slow and heavy, soaked in silence and unspoken things. And though the mansion returns to its usual stillness, guards at their posts, servants gliding through the hallways as if nothing happened, I can still feel the echoes of that night pulsing through the air, a tension that hums beneath every breath I take. Damien's wound has mostly healed, but I still see him wince sometimes when he reaches too quickly or clenches his fist. And something inside me twists each time. That strange, dangerous sympathy that shouldn't exist between us but does, growing roots in all the places my anger used to live. He doesn't speak about it. Not the gunfire, not the blood, not the way he threw himself in front of me without hesitation. But I can feel the shift in him, subtle yet undeniable, like the pull of gravity when you lean too close to an edge. The cold authority that once defined him has softened, if only slightly, into something more controlled, more measured, almost protective. And I don't know what frightens me more, the man who wanted to own me, or the man who now seems to want to understand me. Every evening he calls for me to dine with him, and though part of me wants to refuse, I never do, because some small, treacherous part of me has started to crave his presence. The quiet way he watches me from across the table, the way his voice fills the silence between us like smoke. Slow, deliberate, intoxicating. He never touches me unless he has to, but it's in the spaces between those near touches. The brushing of his hand as he passes me a glass, the warmth of his breath when he leans too close, that I begin to lose my sense of balance, that I begin to question where my hatred ends and something darker begins. One evening, a storm breaks outside, rain lashing against the windows like fingertips, thunder rolling low and distant, and the lights flicker in the dining hall. Damien sits at the head of the long oak table, his posture relaxed, but his eyes fixed on me with that same intensity that always makes my skin feel too tight. He's wearing black again, he always does, the fabric fitting him perfectly, sharp against his pale skin, his collar open just enough to reveal the faint scar near his throat. And I hate that I notice it. Hate that I notice him. "You're quiet tonight," he says finally, his voice low, carrying easily over the crackle of rain. "I don't have much to say," I answer, staring down at my plate, my fork trembling slightly in my hand. He studies me for a moment, then sets down his glass, leaning forward. "You used to talk a lot in school," he says softly, as if he's remembering a different lifetime. "You'd argue with teachers, defend people you barely knew, always trying to fix what couldn't be fixed. I used to watch you and wonder what it would take to make you stop talking." I glance up at him, my pulse quickening. "You found out," I whisper, bitterness curling in my voice. A faint smile tugs at the corner of his mouth, sad rather than smug. "Yes," he says quietly, "and I've regretted it ever since." The room feels smaller suddenly, the air thickening with something I can't name. I want to look away, but his gaze holds me there, and for a moment I see not the ruthless man who commands fear, but the boy who once didn't know what to do with the way I made him feel. It's disarming, that fleeting glimpse of vulnerability, and I hate how much it pulls me in. "I'm not a project you can fix," I say finally, my voice steadier than I feel. "And I'm not someone you get to remake just because you feel guilty." He tilts his head slightly, his eyes darkening. "I don't want to fix you," he says. "I just want you to stop looking at me like I'm the monster under your bed." I swallow hard, forcing myself to meet his gaze. Maybe that's exactly what you are. For a moment, neither of us moves. The storm outside rages, lightning flashing against the windows, and the flicker of light catches in his eyes, turning them into something wild, dangerous, beautiful. He rises then, slow and deliberate, rounding the table until he's standing beside me. I can smell the faint trace of his cologne. Cedar, smoke, something darker underneath. And it makes my head spin. "Tell me something, Elena," he murmurs, his voice lower now, almost a whisper. "When you think of me at night, and I know you do you still see the boy who tormented you? Or do you see the man who bled for you?" His words strike something deep and shameful inside me, and I hate that he's right. That there are nights I lie awake remembering not his cruelty, but the way his eyes looked when he stood bleeding in the rain, unflinching, relentless, alive. I turn away, but he doesn't move, his presence a force all its own. "You think I don't know what this is?" I say quietly, my voice trembling despite my defiance. "You think I don't understand that everything you touch, you destroy?" He leans closer, his breath warm against my ear, his voice soft but sharp enough to cut. "Maybe," he says, "but you keep standing close enough to let me." The words steal the air from my lungs, and I hate him for it. Hate the truth that hums beneath every syllable. Because he's right. I could have run by now, could have begged someone to help me escape, but instead I'm here, sitting in this golden prison, letting him unravel me one careful glance at a time. When I finally find the courage to look up at him, his expression is unreadable, caught somewhere between desire and restraint. His hand hovers near my cheek but doesn't touch, his fingers trembling just slightly. And the restraint in that single gesture is more intimate than any touch could ever be. "I don't know what you want from me," I whisper. He exhales slowly, his jaw tightening, his control slipping for just a heartbeat. "I want you to stop pretending you don't feel this too," he says, his voice raw. I close my eyes, because the truth terrifies me. Not just the truth of what he's saying, but the truth of how my body responds to it, the heat that coils low in my stomach, the ache that has nothing to do with fear. When his fingers finally brush my skin, light, careful, reverent, it feels like something inside me breaks. His touch trails from my cheek to my jaw, his thumb resting just below my lip, and my breath catches. "Damien," I whisper, his name slipping from my mouth like something forbidden. He freezes, his eyes searching mine, and for a long moment we just stand there, the storm raging outside, the air thick between us, every breath heavy with what neither of us can say. Then he steps back, suddenly, sharply, as if burned by the moment itself. "This can't happen," he mutters, his voice rough, his gaze flicking away. "Not like this." I want to ask why, but I already know. Because he's trying to be something he's not. Something his father never taught him to be. And because loving me, if that's what this is, would destroy him just as surely as it would destroy me. He turns to leave, but stops at the doorway, his hand gripping the frame so tightly I can see the tension in his shoulders. "I'll protect you," he says quietly, not looking back. "Even from myself, if I have to." And then he's gone, leaving me alone in the flickering candlelight, my skin still tingling where his fingers touched, my heart pounding with something I don't want to name. Outside, the rain continues to fall, relentless and cold. But all I can think about is the warmth of him, the danger, the hunger, the impossible truth that's been growing between us like fire and dry grass. And I realize, with a kind of sick clarity, that the cage I feared isn't made of walls or guards anymore. It's made of him, of the way he looks at me, of the way I can't stop wanting him even when I know I should run. And the worst part is, I don't think I want to run anymore. There are moments in life when time doesn't break. It bends, stretches thin, becomes something fragile and distorted, as if the world itself is holding its breath. And that's what it feels like the morning I discover the truth. It begins quietly, without warning, in a place that smells faintly of coffee and rain, in the calm before something inside me shatters so completely that I know I'll never be able to look at my reflection the same way again. For days after that stormy night, Damien has kept his distance, polite, controlled, composed. but I can feel the space between us pulsing with everything left unsaid. The tension coiling tighter each time our eyes meet, the silence louder than any argument could ever be. He still joins me for breakfast sometimes, though we speak little. And when he leaves for his meetings, I find myself wandering the halls like a ghost, touching the things that belong to him. His books, his glass, the heavy ring he left on his desk one morning, as if understanding the man might help me understand the feeling he's carved into my chest. It's Lucia who breaks the illusion of stillness. She finds me in the library that morning, sorting through the shelves, her expression more strained than usual, her eyes flicking toward the door before she lowers her voice. "Mrs. Moretti," she whispers, "you shouldn't be in this wing today. The boss has guests." "Guests?" I repeat, frowning, setting the book aside. "What kind of guests?" She hesitates, glancing around as if the walls might be listening. "Your father?" she says finally. For a second, I think I've misheard her. "My father?" She nods, and something cold slides through me, something that feels like disbelief wrapped in dread. I don't wait for permission. I don't ask. I just move, my feet carrying me through the hallways faster than I've ever moved in this house. The echo of my steps sharp against the marble as I follow the sound of voices down toward Damien's study. I stop just before the door, pressing my palm to the wall to steady myself, and listen. "It wasn't part of the deal, Moretti," my father's voice says, rough, impatient, the same tone he used when he used to argue with creditors on the phone, when I was too young to understand what debt really meant. "You got what you wanted. I held up my end." "You held up nothing," Damien's voice answers, quiet but edged with steel, that lethal calm that makes even silence dangerous. "You sold your daughter to cover your losses, and then you tried to pretend it was noble." My knees weaken, my breath catching in my throat. I lean closer, unable to stop myself, unable to unhear. "She was collateral," my father snaps, and the words strike me like a slap I never saw coming. "You said she'd be safe, that you'd keep her out of your business. That was the agreement." My world narrows to those words. Collateral, agreement, sold. And I can't breathe, can't think. Damien's voice hardens. "Safe? You think she's safe because she's here? Because she doesn't know the kind of men who would have come for her if I hadn't stepped in? You're a fool, Rossi. You're lucky I wanted her for myself, or you'd be identifying her body by now." The sound of glass breaking follows. Maybe my father slamming his hand down. Maybe Damien's. I can't tell. "You call this wanting?" My father spits. "You humiliated her. You trapped her in this gilded cage of yours. I kept her alive," Damien cuts in sharply. "Something you never managed to do for anyone you claim to love." There's a long pause after that. So heavy it feels like gravity itself is holding it in place. When my father finally speaks, his voice is lower, tired. "You think you're different from me," he says. "But you're not. You're just a more expensive version of the same monster." I don't remember moving. I just know that one second I'm outside the door, and the next I'm pushing it open, my voice breaking as I speak. "Stop it." Both of them turn. My father pale, startled, Damien unreadable, though a flicker of something like regret crosses his face before he hides it. "Elena," my father says, stepping forward, "you shouldn't be—" "Collateral," I say, the word shaking as it leaves my mouth. "That's what I was, right? A debt you couldn't pay, a bargain you made?" His mouth opens, closes, his silence confirming everything I already know. I turn to Damien, my chest tight, my hands trembling. "And you let me believe you did this to protect me. You looked me in the eye and told me my father begged you for mercy." "He did," Damien says quietly, his gaze steady, but there's no victory in his tone. "He begged for his life, not yours." The room tilts. For a moment I think I might fall, that my body might give out under the weight of it all. "You knew," I whisper. All this time you knew what he'd done, and you let me hate you for it because it made it easier for you to own me. Elena, he begins, stepping forward, but I move back before he can touch me. Don't, I say, my voice breaking. Don't come near me. My father mutters something about leaving, about fixing things, but I barely hear him. I'm looking at Damien, really looking at him, and realizing that every moment of compassion, every glance that felt real, every promise he made, it was all tainted by this, by the deal that made me his property long before I became his wife. You said you'd protect me, I whisper, but you didn't save me from him. You just became him. He flinches at that, the faintest crack in his composure. But it's too late. The truth is already bleeding between us, staining everything we've built. I turn and run, not down the stairs, not toward the courtyard where the guards might stop me, but through the back hallways, through the maze of rooms I've memorized out of desperation. My father calls after me. Damien shouts my name, but I don't stop. I can't. I don't know where I'm going. I just know I have to move, have to get away from the suffocating weight of their lies. Rain starts to fall again, thin at first, then heavy, the sky cracking open as if the world itself is mourning. I push through the doors at the far end of the west wing, out into the garden, the cold air biting against my skin. I don't feel the mud beneath my feet, don't feel the chill. I just keep walking until my body can't anymore, until I collapse near the edge of the fountain, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The sound of footsteps follows, slower, heavier, and I don't need to look to know who it is. Elena, Damien says softly, his voice raw now, stripped of all the calm and control that usually wraps around it like armor. Please, let me explain. There's nothing left to explain, I say, my voice hoarse. You both lied. You both used me. He crouches beside me, the rain soaking through his shirt, his hair plastered to his forehead. I never wanted to hurt you, he says, and there's something in his tone, sincerity, pain, something dangerously close to love, that makes it harder, not easier to breathe. I laugh then, bitter and broken. You keep saying that, I whisper. You keep acting like this obsession of yours is something noble, something I should thank you for. He looks at me, eyes dark with something I can't name. You can hate me all you want, he says quietly, but you're still alive because of me. Then maybe death would have been kinder, I say, and the words taste like poison, but they're the only truth I have left. He closes his eyes, the rain dripping down his face like tears he refuses to shed, and for a moment I almost feel sorry for him, for the boy who became a monster to survive, for the man who doesn't know how to love without breaking what he loves. But then he speaks again, his voice trembling just slightly. You think this is over, Elena, he says, but you don't understand what your father started. There are men coming, men who won't stop until they take everything from me, including you. And as the thunder rolls above us and lightning splits the sky, I realize the truth I've been running from since the day I married him, that no matter how far I go, I'll never truly be free of him. Because the world outside this mansion isn't safer. It's worse. And somehow I'm beginning to understand why Damien Moretti never lets go of the things he claims as his. The rain does not stop that night. It falls endlessly, as if the sky itself is bleeding for everything that has been broken, washing the world in shades of silver and sorrow. And as I sit beneath the shivering branches of the old garden, soaked through, shaking, my mind spirals through everything I've just learned, through every lie, every whispered promise, every touch that now feels like a brand against my skin. I thought I understood the depth of Damien's cruelty, the reach of his power, but it's my father's betrayal that cuts deeper. The realization that my own blood sold me like an object, a number, a way out of his own damnation. I can't tell which of them I hate more, The man who made the deal or the one who carried it out with calm, deliberate hands? Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolls, and I hear the faint hum of engines beyond the gate. Faint, but growing louder, echoing through the rain-soaked air like a warning. At first, I think it's just the guards changing posts. But then the sound multiplies. More engines, more movement. And instinct, sharp and cold, claws at my spine. The world goes still for a heartbeat, the kind of stillness that comes before violence, and then everything explodes at once. The gates shatter open. Gunfire cracks through the night, sharp and unrelenting, flashes of orange tearing through the darkness. The guards shout orders, their voices lost in the storm. And I freeze, my body caught between running and hiding, my heart pounding so hard it feels like it might burst. I can see the headlights cutting through the rain. Black cars sliding to a stop on the wet gravel, men pouring out with weapons drawn, their faces masked, their movements coordinated and brutal. I hear someone call my name, not in warning, but in command. "Elena!" Damien's voice, rough, urgent, alive. I turn toward the mansion just as he appears on the steps, soaked to the bone, his white shirt clinging to him, his gun already drawn. Even from here, even through the chaos, I can see the fury in his eyes, the kind that doesn't come from anger alone, but from something far deeper. Fear, possession, something that feels too much like love to be safe. He shouts something to his men, his voice cutting through the storm. And for a moment, the world narrows to the sound of it. Not the bullets, not the thunder, just him. The way he says my name like it's both a curse and a prayer. "Get inside!" he yells, but I can't move, can't think, until he's suddenly there, grabbing my arm, pulling me against him so hard that the air leaves my lungs. "What the hell are you doing out here?" he demands, his breath ragged, his eyes wild. "You shouldn't." Before he can finish, a shot rings out. He spins, shoving me behind him, the force knocking me to the ground, and I see it. The red bloom spreading across his shoulder, darker than the rain, brighter than the night. He doesn't fall. Of course he doesn't. He turns, firing twice into the shadows, his shots precise, final, and the man who tried to kill him drops instantly. I scramble to my feet, my hands slick with mud, my heart hammering. "You're bleeding," I say, though my voice barely carries over the storm. "I've been bleeding my whole life," he says, his mouth twisting into something that might almost be a smile, except there's no joy in it. "Stay behind me." He pulls me toward the house, his grip iron tight, his movements quick and calculated, but before we can reach the door, another explosion rips through the night. Not a bullet this time, but something bigger, a blast that sends fire licking across the courtyard. The heat scorches my face, the shockwave throwing us both to the ground. For a moment, I can't hear anything but the ringing in my ears. Can't see anything but smoke and rain, and the faint, horrifying glow of flames eating through the edge of the garden. I reach for him blindly, my fingers finding his, and when our hands lock, something inside me steadies, even as the world burns around us. He pulls me up again, half dragging, half guiding me toward the house, shouting orders into the radio clipped to his belt. "Lock the lower level," he commands. "No one gets in without my word." Inside, the air smells of gunpowder and smoke. The once pristine marble streaked with mud and blood. His men are everywhere, moving in practiced formation, securing windows, returning fire through the shattered glass. Somewhere upstairs, a chandelier crashes to the floor, scattering crystal across the tiles like shattered stars. Damien pushes me toward the back hallway. "The vault," he says. "You'll be safe there." "I'm not leaving you," I say before I can stop myself, the words tearing out of me like instinct. He stops, turns, his eyes catching mine. And for a moment, everything else, the gunfire, the rain, the screaming, fades. "You don't understand," he says quietly, stepping closer. If they take you, I'll burn this city to the ground to get you back. Something inside me cracks then. Not from fear, not even from love, but from the terrifying truth that I believe him. Before I can answer, he pulls me close, his hand cupping the back of my neck, his mouth finding mine in a kiss that's not gentle, not soft, but desperate. A collision of blood and breath and everything we've both been trying not to feel. The world could end right there, and I don't think I'd notice because for that single, impossible moment, the chaos outside doesn't matter. There's only him, his warmth, his heartbeat, the taste of rain and salt and defiance. When he pulls away, his forehead rests against mine, his voice barely a whisper. If I don't make it out of this, don't, I breathe, shaking my head. Don't you dare say that. He smiles faintly, the kind of smile that breaks you just by existing. Then don't make me regret keeping you alive. Before I can respond, he's gone, disappearing down the hallway with his gun raised, his silhouette swallowed by the smoke. I want to follow, but his men block my path, forcing me toward the lower levels, and by the time they seal the door behind me, the only sound I can hear is the muffled roar of the battle above. The war Damien Moretti has always carried in his veins now unleashed in full. The vault is cold, the walls thick, the air stale. I pace, my body trembling, the weight of every moment pressing against me until I can't breathe. I press my ear to the door, listening, but there's nothing but silence now, the kind that comes after destruction. And then, faintly, footsteps. I think it's him at first. I want it to be him, but the sound is wrong. Heavier, slower. I step back, my pulse hammering, and the door creaks open. The man who steps inside is not Damien. His clothes are dark, his face scarred, his smile cold. Mrs. Moretti, he says softly, his accent sharp and foreign. Your husband sends his regards. I freeze, too shocked to move, too terrified to scream, as two more men appear behind him, blocking the exit. He steps closer, his gun low, his voice almost kind. Come now, he murmurs. He can't protect you forever. But before he can reach me, before I can even think, a shot rings out from the hallway, clean and precise, and the man crumples forward, blood spreading fast across his chest. Behind him stands Damien, covered in rain and ash, his eyes burning with something primal, something inhuman. He steps over the bodies without flinching, reaches for me, and when his hand touches my face, it's trembling. Not from weakness, but from everything he's been holding back. I told you, he whispers, his breath hot against my ear. I'd destroy anyone who tried to take you from me. And as I look into his eyes, I realize he means it. Every word, every threat, every vow whispered through clenched teeth and broken nights. Because this isn't love. Not the kind I once believed in. This is something darker, older, written in blood and fire. The kind of bond that doesn't ask for forgiveness or freedom. The kind that ends with both of us burning and neither of us walking away. The mansion is quiet after the storm, but it's not the peaceful kind of quiet. It's the kind that lives in the aftermath of chaos, heavy and restless, like the air after lightning has struck too close, like the earth holding its breath before something new begins to break. Smoke still lingers in the hallways, faint and bitter, the scent of gunpowder clinging to the velvet curtains and polished floors, a ghost of violence that refuses to fade. The fire has been put out, the dead have been carried away, and yet the weight of what happened presses against me with the same suffocating intensity as when the bullets were still flying, as if danger itself has soaked into the walls of this place and made a home there. Damien has barely spoken since that night, though he hasn't left my side, hovering near me like a shadow that refuses to rest. His shoulder is wrapped tightly beneath his shirt, blood seeping faintly through the bandages, but he ignores it with the same stubborn pride he gives to everything else that might remind him he's human. I want to ask how many people died, how many of his men won't be coming back, but the words stick in my throat because I already know that whatever number he gives me, it will be too high, and he'll carry it like another scar beneath his skin. It's late when I finally find the courage to speak. The house is mostly asleep, the storm long gone, the world outside washed clean, and yet I feel dirtier than I ever have, like the rain missed me entirely. Damien stands by the window of the study, the faint light of dawn tracing the outline of his shoulders, his head bowed slightly, one hand wrapped around a glass of whiskey that he hasn't touched. The silence stretches between us, heavy and endless, until I can't bear it any longer. "Who were they?" I ask, my voice breaking the stillness like a fragile blade. "The men who attacked." He doesn't turn at first, doesn't even flinch. But I see the way his jaw tightens, the faint movement of his throat as he swallows. "Enemies," he says finally, his tone flat, emotionless. I take a step closer. That's not an answer. He exhales, setting the glass down, his hand trembling slightly before he shoves it into his pocket. "They were the Costellos," he says at last. "Your father's old associates. He owed them money long before he owed me. They thought taking you would make him pay faster. They thought it would break me." I stare at him, my pulse quickening, because the realization that my father's sins are still chasing us, chasing me, makes my stomach twist. "You knew this would happen," I whisper. "You knew it was only a matter of time before they came for me." "Yes," he says simply, finally turning to face me, his eyes dark, unflinching. "Then why didn't you tell me?" I demand, my voice rising, anger finally catching fire inside me after days of exhaustion and grief. "You talk about protection, about control, about keeping me safe, but you never tell me anything. You just decide for me, you lock me away, you make me live in fear while pretending it's safety." His gaze sharpens, his voice low but firm. "Because fear keeps you alive, Elena." I shake my head, my breath coming fast. "No. Fear keeps me caged. It keeps me small. It keeps me exactly where you want me, beneath your thumb, dependent on your mercy." He steps closer, his expression unreadable, his voice lowering into something dangerous. "You think I want you small?" he asks, almost incredulous. "You think I went through all of this? The blood, the war, the endless fucking chaos, just to keep you weak? You have no idea what I've done for you, what I've lost for you." His words hit like blows, but I can't stop myself. "Then tell me," I whisper, my voice trembling. "Tell me what you've done, Damien. Tell me why me, why it's always been me, why you can't let me go." He looks away for a long time, his jaw clenching, his chest rising and falling like a man caught between confession and self-destruction. When he finally speaks, his voice is hoarse, quieter than I've ever heard it. "Because you were the only thing that made me feel human," he says, the words almost a whisper. "And I hated you for it." I don't breathe. I can't. He laughs then, but it's a broken sound, bitter and hollow. "You think I bullied you in school because I enjoyed it? You think I took your piece just to prove I could? No. I did it because you looked at me like I mattered, and I didn't know how to live with that. Every time you smiled, I saw everything I could never be. You were light. And I was born in a house where light didn't survive. My father beat it out of me before I even knew what it was." His voice cracks, barely, but it's enough to undo something in me. "I tried to stay away from you," he continues, his eyes flicking up to meet mine, raw and vulnerable in a way I've never seen before. "I told myself it was better if you hated me, that I could bury what I felt and let you live your perfect life without ever seeing what I've become. But then I saw your name again, years later, on your father's contract. And I knew it was you. And for the first time in my life, I didn't want to win. I wanted to own something I'd already destroyed." The room spins. My chest feels tight, my skin too hot. my thoughts colliding in 1,000 directions. I want to scream at him, hit him, run. But I can't move. Can't even think. Because the weight of his confession presses down on me like gravity itself. "So you married me out of guilt?" I whisper, my voice trembling. "You married me because you couldn't forgive yourself for what you did?" He shakes his head slowly, stepping closer, his voice low, almost pleading. "No. I married you because I couldn't stop loving you, no matter how much I wanted to. Because the thought of another man touching you made me see red. Because even when I tried to hate you, I couldn't." The words hang in the air like smoke, thick and suffocating. I can feel the heat of him now. Too close. Too dangerous. And I realize that whatever wall I've been building between us has already started to crumble. "Damien," I whisper, not as a plea, but as something heavier, something that feels like surrender. He reaches out, his hand trembling as he brushes his fingers down my cheek, his touch light but searing. "I've never been good," he says softly. "You know that. But tell me you don't feel it too. Tell me you don't wake up in the middle of the night thinking about what it would mean if we stopped fighting this." His breath is warm against my skin, his voice a low ache in the quiet. "I hate you," I whisper, though even I can hear the lie trembling in my tone. He smiles then, slow, sad, knowing, and leans closer, his lips hovering just inches from mine. "No," he murmurs, "you hate what I make you feel." And when he finally kisses me, it's nothing like before. It's slower, deeper, the kind of kiss that unravels everything it touches. My hands find his shoulders, my body betraying me, and for one dizzy, terrifying moment, I forget every reason I ever had to hate him. I forget everything except the way he says my name, the way he holds me like I'm both a sin and salvation. But then there's a sound. Faint, distant, echoing from the hallway. And he freezes. The change is instant. The softness gone, replaced by sharp alertness. "What is it?" I whisper, but he's already moving, reaching for the gun tucked beneath his jacket. The noise comes again, louder now. Footsteps, then voices, then something that sounds like a crash. Damien curses under his breath, his expression shifting from wary to deadly. "They're not done," he says, his tone colder than I've ever heard it. "The Costellos. They're inside." Before I can respond, the glass window behind us shatters, shards flying through the air, and everything turns to chaos once more. Damien grabbing me, dragging me down, bullets tearing through the room, the roar of violence swallowing the sound of my scream. And as the world falls apart around us for the second time, one thought echoes in my mind louder than all the gunfire. This is what love looks like when it's born in hell. The sound of gunfire fades like the last echo of a nightmare, dissolving into silence so thick it feels alive, pressing against my ears, wrapping around my heartbeat until I can't tell where one ends and the other begins. The smoke curls through the shattered windows, twisting upward in thin gray ribbons that catch the dawn light like ghosts reluctant to leave. And all around us, the once perfect mansion lies in ruin. Marble cracked, glass shattered, blood staining the gold that once gleamed. The war has come and gone, and yet it feels as if the battle is still inside me, clawing at the edges of my ribs, demanding to be remembered. I can taste iron on my tongue and fear in my lungs as I try to steady my breathing, the acrid sting of gunpowder burning in the air. Damien is crouched a few feet away, his shirt torn, his arm bleeding again where a bullet grazed him, his expression the same blend of fury and control that I've come to know too well. But beneath it now, I see something different, something heavier, as if the weight of every choice he's ever made has finally settled on his shoulders. He looks at me then, not like the predator who once haunted my high school hallways, not like the man who locked me in his gilded cage, but like someone stripped bare, raw and human, eyes searching mine for something he's not sure exists anymore. "It's over," I whisper, my voice trembling, half disbelieving. "It's really over." He shakes his head slowly, dragging in a rough breath, his gaze sweeping the room. "It's never over," he murmurs. "Not in this life. Not for people like me." Something in the way he says it makes my chest ache, because for all his power, for all the blood on his hands, there's a truth in his voice that sounds like defeat. I crawl closer, ignoring the sting of glass against my palms, until I'm near enough to see the tremor in his hands, the flicker of exhaustion behind his composure. "You can stop," I say softly, as if saying it might make it possible. "You can walk away, Damien. We both can." He laughs then, low and broken, shaking his head. "Walk away." "You don't walk away from an empire built on blood, Elena. You inherit it, or you burn with it." I flinch at the words, because I know they're true. This world doesn't forgive weakness, and love is the greatest weakness of all. "Then let it burn," I whisper, the words trembling but certain. "Let it all burn. I don't care about the empire. I don't care about the money or the name or the power. I just want to live. Not survive, not hide. Live." He looks at me then. Really looks, and for a moment I think he might believe me, that he might finally let go of the ghosts that built him. But then he reaches for me, pulling me close, his hand sliding to the back of my neck, his breath hot against my temple. "You think I don't want that?" he says, his voice rough, almost a growl. "You think I haven't dreamed of it? But the moment I walk away, they'll come for you again. The moment I stop fighting, they'll make me watch as they take you. I can't live with that." His words cut through me, sharper than any blade. "So you'll live like this forever?" I whisper. "Trapped in your own war, killing everyone who gets too close to what's left of your heart?" He doesn't answer. He doesn't have to. The silence says everything. I reach up and touch his cheek, my fingers tracing the line of his jaw, the faint bruise along his throat, the blood that's already beginning to dry. "You said once that fear keeps me alive," I say quietly. "But it's killing you, Damien. It's been killing you since the day you learned to hate what you loved." His eyes close for a moment, his breath trembling, and when he opens them again, I see the boy he used to be. Scared, furious, desperate to be loved, but too proud to ask for it. "You should hate me," he says softly, his hand tightening at the back of my neck. "After everything I've done, after everything I've taken from you, you should hate me." "I did," I whisper, and the confession slips from my mouth before I can stop it. "For a long time I did. But hate is easy. It's clean. What I feel for you isn't." He looks at me like he's trying to memorize me, every line, every breath, every word. Then he leans in, his lips brushing mine. Slow and tender this time, the kiss of a man who knows he's already lost. When he pulls away, his forehead rests against mine, and his voice is nothing more than a whisper. "I told you once I'd burn the world for you," he says. "I just didn't realize I'd have to burn myself too." Before I can speak, before I can tell him that I don't want him to be my savior, that I just want him to stop bleeding for me, there's another sound, the sharp click of a gun being cocked, and everything freezes. At the edge of the doorway stands a man, one of the Costello lieutenants who somehow survived the chaos outside, his face streaked with blood, his hand steady on the trigger. I see the gleam of the barrel before Damien does, and instinct takes over. "Damien!" I scream, but he moves faster than thought, turning, shoving me behind him just as the gun fires. The sound is deafening, the recoil of violence echoing through the broken room, and then the world tilts. He stumbles, his hand reaching out blindly, his body folding forward before he collapses to the floor. "No," I breathe, falling to my knees beside him, my hands pressing against his chest, warmth spilling through my fingers that I can't stop no matter how hard I try. "No, no, no, stay with me, do you hear me? You don't get to leave me like this. His eyes find mine, unfocused but still burning, and his hand rises, trembling, to brush a tear from my cheek. You're safe, he whispers, the faintest hint of a smile touching his lips. That's all that matters. Don't you dare, I choke out, the words breaking against the weight of everything we've survived. Don't you dare die on me after everything you've done to keep me alive. He laughs, soft, broken, beautiful. You were the light, he murmurs. You always were. And then his hand falls, and the world goes silent again. But this time, it's the kind of silence that breaks things. I don't remember screaming, but I must have, because my throat burns, and the sound echoes in my ears long after the men rush in, long after they drag the Costello lieutenant away, long after someone tries to pull me back. I stay there on the floor, holding him, the warmth leaving his body. The rain starting to fall again through the shattered window above us, washing away the blood but not the pain. It feels like hours before I move, though it might have been minutes, or maybe eternity. I stand slowly, numb, the world blurring around the edges. Someone asks what to do, and I hear myself answer in a voice that doesn't sound like mine. Bury him beside his mother, I say, where the sun reaches in the morning. And when they look at me, waiting, uncertain, afraid, I realize that something has shifted. Damien's empire doesn't die with him. It waits. And the men who once feared him now turn their eyes to me, as if searching for what comes next. I walk to the window then, the air cold against my skin, the city stretched out before me. Beautiful, broken mine. I'll keep it, I whisper, not to them, but to the ghost of him that still lingers in the room, in the walls, in the place he carved inside me that will never heal. I'll keep it safe, the way you tried to keep me. Outside, the sun finally rises, cutting through the gray clouds, washing the ruins in light. And for the first time, I understand what he meant all along. That sometimes love isn't salvation. Sometimes it's the fire that consumes everything, leaving you standing in the ashes with nothing but the memory of warmth. I close my eyes, the wind carrying the scent of smoke and rain, and I whisper to the ghost of the boy who became my monster, the man who became my heart. You were right, I say softly. The world burned, and I stayed.